This is problem 8-83. It says problem 8-81 made Mariposa curious about sums and products. I think that she was in the original word problem, but I took her out, so just so you know. She decided to solve the equation x squared minus 6x plus 25 equals 0 and look at the sums and products of its solutions. What patterns can you help her find that might give her ideas about the equation once she knows the solutions? Check it out. All right, so we're going to go ahead and solve this x squared minus 6x plus 25 equals 0. So if I want to solve it, my options are I can use the quadratic formula or I can complete the square. Doesn't matter which way you want to do it. Since it's in standard form, maybe I'll just go ahead and complete the square. Actually, I'm sorry, I'll go ahead and use the quadratic formula. I think some of you are more comfortable with that, so let's see. It takes longer, but whatever. We've got x equals the opposite of b. So the opposite of -6 plus or minus the square root of -6 squared minus 4 times 1 times 25 all over 2 times 1. So as we look to simplify it down, we should have 6 plus or minus square root of 36 minus 100 should be a -64 all over 2, which would then be 6 plus or minus square root of 64, or -64 should be 8i over 2. And then when we simplify that down, we can divide them both by 2. We should get 3 plus or minus 4i. Okay, so we get that x is equal to 3 plus 4i, and x equals 3 minus 4i. Okay, so here's where we kind of put everything together. So all the work you just did on 8-82 and 8-81 should hopefully come together, and some of you might already see the patterns that are happening. Okay, so here's what we're looking at. If I take my two roots and I find the sum, you already did this with several problems, right? If I do 3 plus 4i plus 3 minus 4i, I get 6. If I find the product of these two roots, and I do 3 plus 4i times 3 minus 4i, I should get 9 minus 16i squared, which is 9 minus 16 times -1, or 9 plus 16, which should give me 25. Okay, so here's what I'm asking you to look at. Okay, look at the function or the equation that we started with. We see a -6 and a positive 25. Okay, so you see here we've got a positive 6 and a positive 25. Let's jump back to 8-81. Let's think about the equations that we had here. Right, so for letter A, 2 plus I and 2 minus I, we ended up with the function y equals x squared minus 4x plus 5. So notice here, right, positive 5 and positive 5. And we've got a -4 and a positive 4. Notice on each of these, our middle term is the opposite of the sum of the roots. So our middle term is the opposite of the sum, and then our back term is the same thing as the product on each of them. So when we look back here, that should hopefully still make sense, right? So I know I highlighted this one in yellow, but our middle term is always the opposite of the sum, and our last term is always the product. And you probably want to write that down, okay? So the middle term is always the opposite of the sum, And I'm going to go down to this next row here. The last term, or the C term, is always the product. Okay, and we're talking about of the roots, right? So if we know the roots, it might be a little bit easier for us to come up with the equations. And we'll look at some here at the bottom on 8-86 in just a moment. Let's go ahead here, and you may move on to 8-85.